Sup, Jackwagons? I'm back with part 2 of What If Deku and some of Class 1A had a connection to the Omniforce. Last time we left off, they had just both Bakugo and Midoriya, or as I usually call them by their first names, Izuku and Katsumi, because Bakugo's a girl in this one, had just barely saved Mina from the sludge villain. And probably some of you are wondering where the heck was Kirishima? Well, he just wasn't with her that day. And as they were talking in the park, All Might showed up. And that's kind of where we left it from there. Anyway, All Might would go up to both Midoriya and Bakugo, asking them why they ran out to go save Mina when they didn't even know her. And both Katsumi and Izuku simply stated that that's what a hero should do, and they were trained to do that by the other Omniforce wielders, by the Gladiator Masters. They were trained to always do what was right and never hesitate. And All Might was very much proud to see this. And then All Might revealed to them that he actually knew Speed Fury, and that he was supposed to be informed whenever Speed Fury would have found some new modern generation versions of the Gladiator Masters. Unfortunately, they got caught up and didn't ever get around to it for a few years. And Deku got a hold of Speed Fury using his communicator, because all Gladiator Masters receive a communicator when they get their power, so they can communicate with one another no matter where they are. And told Speed Fury about this, with Speed Fury just replying with, "Ah, crap. I can't believe I forgot about that for 10 years. Well, send him over." And so, Izuku, All Might, Katsumi, and Mina as well all go to the base. And sorry if you can see my feet. For some reason, people were complaining about that on TikTok. I don't really know why. People have weird fetishes. Anyway, so as they come to the base, immediately, a few of the Gladiator Masters notice that Mina's with them, but they also sense that she has a small amount of Omniforce energy flowing through her, meaning that she's definitely worthy. She just has to have her powers unlocked. And so, Speed Fury discreetly gives Izuku a badge to give to Mina later, when they're not, having a talk with All Might. And then All Might comes over to Izuku and Katsumi, and Mina as well, and asks if they know what his quirk is, which, of course, they don't. And All Might simply tells them the whole story about how All for One and One for All came to be. And yes, he does tell them the whole story, because unlike in the original, both Izuku and Katsumi are powerful enough to handle All for One. He even shows them his more weakened state, but which isn't actually his weakened state anymore. It's just his civilian form now. He just still has to eat more to get himself back to what he was before. And he wants to pass his quirk on to Izuku or Katsumi, but both of them decline. Well, no, not both of them. Katsumi declines because she already has had a quirk before getting her powers anyway, and Mina also says that if Izuku was quirkless before getting his Omniforce powers, then he should pass it to him. Because if he does that, then Izuku won't be made fun of for not having a quirk. He wouldn't have been made fun of, but they're kids, they don't understand that Izuku's overpowered right now. All of them are. And so All Might passes One for All to Izuku. Now, because of Izuku already being crazy strong, he doesn't have to go through the whole training regimen. But he does want to do something in his spare time while he waits to go to UA. And yes, they are still planning on going to UA. They don't have to, because they're already powerful, but they're mostly going to UA just to learn the necessary things for schooling. And also because it's a hero school, and it's always been a dream of Izuku and Katsumi's to go there. So, of course, Izuku gets All Might starts teaching Izuku how to train, but by how to use it. I just dropped my pencil. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. And he takes him outside, and Izuku is shocked to find out that the entire base of the Gladiator Masters is in the middle of a random desert. No, but it's a desert in the United States, but it's still a desert. And Speed Fury says, "You've never been outside the base? Huh, I thought one of us would have taken you out there by now." "Yeah, we're in the middle of a desert in Utah," he said. "I was born here and raised here, so we just kind of stuck around this area." And then, anyway, so All Might begins to teach Izuku how to activate One for All. But, they do this later after he actually digests the hair, which, of course, still freaked him out. And All Might pretty much just tells him what he told him in the show. Clench your butt cheeks and yell smash from inside your heart. Speed Fury looks at All Might and says, "Is that seriously the way you're teaching him how to use the power?" All Might says, "Hey, it works for me." He's like, he's 15, and I doubt that he's going to be able to figure that out. Well, I mean, I doubt that that's a good idea to teach him. Also, you've had that quirk for who knows how long now, and he just barely got it. If he goes full 100% right now, he's going to break some limbs. And so Speed Fury says, slowly power up. Well, do what All Might said, but don't go full out right off the bat. Slowly power up until you start feeling like, I don't know, some kind of pain, like it's too much. So Izuku starts doing that, and he gets all the way up to 75%. Now, I know that making him overpowered right off the bat, but you gotta remember, Izuku's already overpowered as is with his omniforce powers. So the only difference is he needs to have a bit more, get used to the power more. And so Izuku lets off a punch, and it unroots several small trees that are in the area of the desert. I would say cactuses, but there are no cactuses in that are big enough to be seen being ripped out of the ground in the desert in Utah, in any of the deserts in Utah. I mean, they are big, but they're not tall. Anyway, Izuku was shocked at how much power he could put out, and Speed Fury was like, "Whoa! Good thing that this area isn't private property, or else we'd be screwed for that." Although I could just reverse time and fix all that. So anyway, they went back to the base, and things would go on as normal. Izuku eventually would stumble across Dagobah Beach along with both Katsumi and Mina, and also Mina would eventually be given her Omniforce powers, and her power is poison. So specifically, and her acid also gets improved by it. And as for her Gladiator Master form, I went with a poison dragon. So yeah, her skin turns purple, and one thing I forgot to mention about when some Gladiator Masters get their powers, their hair gets longer. A good example of that is actually Speed Fury himself, because his hair is much longer than mine, and before he got his powers, he looked more like me than he looks like now. And if you pay attention closely, Katsumi's hair also kind of grew a little bit longer. So yeah, Mina's hair is actually longer than Katsumi's, and it's kind of tied into a ponytail that lays flat on her back. Anyway, so when as they're cleaning the beach, it takes them a while, but because there's 3 of them and because of how powerful they are, it's not that hard. And for the most part, because of her acid being stronger, she can just melt most of the garbage that's there. And Izuku kind of also incinerates a bit of it, and Katsumi kind of shreds it up with her claws, while in her rage boosted form. Every now and then they'll go and visit the Gladiator Masters, because even though that they don't really live with the other Gladiator Masters, they still count them as family, because all the Gladiator Masters do. And they realize real quick, when they're not training with the Gladiator Masters, that it's seemingly the other Gladiator Masters are kind of, a bunch of kids. Outside of the field of battle, they act like kids most of the time, like reckless teenagers for the most part. The only one who isn't as reckless are the older members, and sometimes Speed Fury. Speed Fury is more, but Speed Fury does kind of have a bit of a sarcastic and sassy attitude towards some of the other Gladiator Masters. It was one of these times when they were just hanging out with some of the other Gladiator Masters, that they hear a crash, and they see another gladiator master thrown through several walls and outside of the base. And as they look around, check and see stand up to see if he was okay, they look around and see all the other gladiator masters just sitting there acting like nothing happened. Several were still on their phones, and Speed Fury was just looking over at the hole with an exasperated expression, like he was thinking to himself, "I gotta fix another wall, or a few actually." And Izuku was wondering, is this normal for here? Now, the other three didn't see what Gladiator Master it was. All they saw was a faint blur of metal, or like some silver substance with a bit of green mixed in. But what they saw coming out of the hallway was somewhat terrifying, but also kind of confusing at the same time. A woman with multicolored hair and pure white skin came out of the hallway. She was wielding a large rocket-powered warhammer, and the face she wore was that of pure rage. This was Rainbow Shock. And while Rainbow Shock was most of the time tolerable and was kind-hearted to everybody, the Gladiator Master she specifically threw out the wall was Speed Fury's best friend and the person she hates the most. They heard that she then spoke. "Gash Claw, I'm gonna kill you for this." She then rushes out with her hammer and starts beating the crap out of Gash Claw. Izuku tries to tell Speed Fury to get her to stop, and Speed simply says, they do that all the time. He's not going to learn his lesson from this one, he won't learn from the next one either. Izuku says, "What do you mean he won't learn? He hasn't learned?" Speed Fury says, "Oh yeah, he's a cyborg now, thanks to Rainbow Shock. Basically, she ripped off his arm one time and beat him with it, so we had to get him a cybernetic replacement. Luckily, that cybernetic replacement happened to be able to infuse with his nerves, so it feels just like a regular limb. The unfortunate side is that whenever she rips one of those off, it still hurts him." Midoriya, suffice to say, was a little concerned at how nonchalant Speed Fury was. Like this is just a normal thing. Like, they just let each other beat the heck out of each other and don't do anything about it? And Izuku finally spoke, What if your friend gets killed?" And Speed Fury says, I've died like 5 times already, maybe 6. I haven't really been keeping track. It's been a few centuries. I always end up coming back to life. I'm not really allowed to die. None of us are. Especially you 3. Izuku's eyes went wide at this. "We can't die?" No, did we not mention that? Izuku was, suffice to say, pretty shocked. Later, Rainbow Shock walked in, having a more pleasant smile on her face and having her hammer put away. Gashclaw crawled in a bit later. One of his arms had been severely mangled, but it was slowly fixing itself. Gashclaw was the smartest member of the Gladiator Masters, yet somehow he was still too dumb to learn his lesson. The only part of him that wasn't cybernetically enhanced thanks to Rainbow was his eye, which he actually let his guard down in the middle of a fight one time when they were first starting their work, and his left eye got shot. So, yeah, he's got like some sapphire energy covering that up. Gashclaw then walked over as his limbs were finally all fixed up. He introduced himself to the 3 new members, saying he actually hadn't gotten the chance to introduce himself yet, and saying that he has met a few of the other new members, but just not you 3 yet. Izuku, Katsumi, and Mina were shocked at this. There were other members of the new generation that had become Gladiator Masters. Gashclaw cocked an eyebrow and said, "You didn't know that? That's some lazy writing." He said, Speed Fury shouted at him and said, "Stop breaking the 4th wall, chicken legs!" Which then Gashclaw replies with, "My legs are from a lion, not a chicken." If you haven't figured it out yet, Gashclaw can see past the 4th wall. He's one of the only Gladiator Masters that can. The other ones are, well, just 2 others, that being Speed Fury and Slappy, who you haven't seen yet. Anyway, so Gashclaw makes an effort to actually introduce the kids to the other Gladiator Masters that were new. One of those Gladiator Masters, let me just go over here. 2 of those Gladiator Masters had actually been trained together by Stardust, the Gladiator Master who used space manipulation, and Chameleon, who was a a chameleon dragon. She really didn't come up with a more creative name than that. She basically could change color depending on how she feels, but her entire body is like made up of different colors. And these two gladiator masters were both female gladiator masters. This was Ochako Uraraka and Tsuyu Asawi. Ochako Uraraka had been given the powers of a space dragon, which is why her wings were shaped so weird. As for Tsuyu, she was a gecko dragon, which isn't like a chameleon, which they sort of are related to chameleon dragons, but they don't have the color changing thing going on. They have similar powers, though. And upon meeting these two, they were kind of shocked. They didn't know that there were other gladiator masters besides them. The entire time, they thought they were the only two. But no, there had been others, but they just apparently had never seen one another while they'd been training. Uraraka wore the usual space clothes that, well, not, she didn't actually have her hero costume yet, but she, just imagine most of these guys in their kind of casual clothing. Anyway, so upon them meeting, they realized that it was probably better if they met all the newer members, and so Speed Fury and the other gladiator masters activated their communicators so that they could contact the other gladiator masters. Two of these gladiator masters seemed to always be together, and they seemed to look very similar in appearance. This was Fumikage Tokoyami, and his quirk had become a gladiator master. It had become an entire separate entity from him, with Tokoyami becoming a Dark Rift Beast, which gave him like kind of a grumpy personality because Dark Rift Beasts are always angry, and Dark Shadow becoming a Water Shadow Demon, which calmed him down a bit more, making him less aggressive at night, but still more powerful. As for the other ones, there was a female named Invisible Girl, or Toru Hagakure, and originally her quirk didn't allow her to become visible, but her power that she was given was light manipulation, so she could manipulate light so that she was visible now. As for the way I designed her hair, I wanted to make her hair look like that one picture I saw of her wearing Todoroki's outfit. Also, I had to improvise making a costume for her. As for how her light powers work, she can actually full-on make her parts of her body disappear, like so they're not even there. So this part right here, where there's like no upper arm, that's because of the fact that she actually made those disappear, so she has much more range with her punching. And also, she is a fox or a wolf. I think she's actually a wolf. If I did a fox, I think the ears would be a little less pointed. Anyway, but then they met a rather peculiar new member of the Gladiator Masters. This person seemed to be a mixture of two different demons in one. She still had her horns, though, which was also weird. And she called herself Shoko Todoroki. Yes, I'm turning Shoto into a girl, too, because, once again, I don't think Shoto's would actually have been worthy of being able to wield the omniforce. In this continuity, Shoko's father, Endeavor, was actually somewhat decent. Then the reason she has this burn on the side of her face was actually for a really dumb reason on Endeavor's part. When they had left the kitchen for a while, they left the teapot boiling on the stove, and that teapot happened to have a handle sticking over the edge. And for some reason, they didn't think to like make it so that the toddler couldn't reach the handle. Kitchen safety, people. So yeah, she has that burn on her eye from a happy accident. But as for her powers, she has a third ability that she didn't have before. Along with her ice and fire abilities, she has plant abilities. And that is, it's not as visible here, but like the green on her suit is what was trying to reference that. And because she's an Inferno/Frigid Demon hybrid, and that's why her hair is part blue, part black. The red and white still stayed, though. But anyway, they realized that right off the bat, she kind of was a bit quiet. She didn't talk very much, but she still meant well. And yeah, there were still more that they had to meet, but they never could have actually gotten in contact with at the moment because they had other stuff they were doing. But over time, they started training together, and they ended up getting stronger, and to where Speed Fury finally let them form a team with Izuku as their leader. And Katsumi was a bit kind of miffed at this, wondering why she didn't get to be the leader, and they simply said because Izuku was technically the first to get their powers, and they needed they needed a top commander who had fire abilities, since they didn't have that already. But then Katsumi said that Rainbow Shock can use fire, but he said, yeah, but that's only part of her abilities. She's like, I don't know if you guys realize this yet, but fire is not her only power. She just uses that to beat the heck out of Gashclaw. And, the hammer, too. Her power is actually nature manipulation, so she's literally got full control of anything that nature created, including technology, because guess what? Humans are a part of nature, and humans made technology. Katsumi simply said, that's broken. He's like, yes, it is. I mean, I can erase realities, so that's broken, but... And then Katsumi said, yeah, but your girlfriend's insane. He's like, yeah, she is. She's a psycho. They all looked at Rainbow, expecting her to get mad at that, but she simply kept drinking the entire gallon of orange juice she was drinking before saying, what? I know I'm a psycho. It was then that Mina said that your relationship with her is toxic. He's like, kinda, yeah. Anyway, they continued training with one another, but that's when things started to get kind of strange. They saw a new Gladiator Master they had never seen before, but there was something off about him. Sure, he was obviously a Gladiator Master. He had green skin and he was a chameleon dragon, but he seemed to be carrying a sword that looked like a slice of watermelon, and his head had purple balls in it. He was also kind of still shorter than everybody else, even if he did even if it was very obvious that he was a Gladiator Master, he was still like regular human size, which was kind of odd seeing that in a Gladiator Master. Eventually, they introduced themselves to the new Gladiator Master, and he said that his name was Minoru Mineta, and that his want for being a hero is to prove that your size does not matter when it comes to being a hero if you have the right reasons for being one. In this continuity, Mineta was actually trained by the Gladiator Masters from an early age, and because they also taught him what's right and what's wrong. Unlike, I don't think his parents ever did that, because there's no way his parents would have there's no way his parents just would have let him be the way he is, unless they're terrible parents, or he's just doing it behind their back. In this continuity, though, he had several female Gladiator Masters around him who were terrifying, and he knew, and Speed Fury basically let him know that women are scary. As for the people that trained him, well, there were other people who had powers similar to his. His power was called fruit manipulation. He could basically use different powers that had to do with different fruit. For instance, he could use his potassium sprint, which would give him super speed, or he could use his citrus blast, which was literally him shooting orange juice from his hands, which would actually sting when it hits, kind of like acid. He has a lot of different powers. His lemon version of it is a lot more potent. As for his mentors, well, to start, I have to pull these pictures back up here. Give me a second. His mentors consisted of the other 4 Gladiator Masters who had food-based or edible-based powers. The first being Sugar Rush. Sugar Rush, his power was based around candy. And while she was kind-hearted and everything like that, she was a very versatile fighter. And her weapon of choice was literally a candy cane scythe, which of course is silly in and of itself, but it's actually very effective. She's also one of the more stronger Gladiator Masters, being the second in command of Rainbow Shock's team. Minoru's next mentor was somebody by the name of Ham. Now, Ham, his power, as you can guess from his name, is meat manipulation. And he, unlike some of the other Gladiator Masters, is one of the few healers on the team, but he's also a heavy hitter at the same time. There aren't very many healers on each Gladiator Master. In the Gladiator Masters, there's actually only one per team. But the good news about his abilities is he can make up for his healing by fighting it out pretty heavily. Eventually, Izuku actually asked Ham why his name was Ham, and he said, "Well, that's because of my power." And he's like, "That's at least my Gladiator Master name." And Izuku was confused at this. He asked him, "Gladiator Master name?" He's like, and then Ham's like, "Do you honestly think someone's dumb enough to name me after a piece of meat?" And then Izuku thought about this for a second and then said, "No." He's like, "Yeah, we all got Gladiator Master names that we all call each other by. We don't really call each other by our real names anymore." Izuku asked him what his real name was, and he simply said, "Beef." Izuku Izuku kind of like deadpanned at that. He's like, "Your name was Beef?" He's like, "Nah, I'm just kidding. That was my nickname that people called me. My name was Ethan, but my friends call me Beef, which is why I call me Ham, which is where I got the name Ham from." Only then, from behind him, another Gladiator Master, one of the other members of his team, said, "We call you Ham because you are one." And it was the member of Telekinesis team by the name of Hotshot. And Hotshot his power was literally just guns. He could make whatever gun popped into his imagination. He also made a puppy gun, which was both disturbing and weird to think about. Where did he get the ammo from? Minoru's next mentor was the 5th strongest member of the Gladiator Masters and Gashclaw's girlfriend. This was Crossfrost. Cross's power revolved around pastries like donuts, cake, stuff like that. Her and Sugar Rush were like the best when it came to making desserts. When the Gladiator Masters decided to throw a party for no reason other than to just throw one, and she was pretty dang good at it. She could also bring pastries to life, and she was basically the go-to teacher when it came to teaching Mineta how to use his powers to like their fullest extent. The others would teach him other things, like how to make weapons out of their powers, or how to heal with their powers. Healing was done with Ham's part. As for making weapons, that came from Sugar Rush. Finally, Minoru's last mentor was Crisp. Crisp's power revolved around fast food, and she had several different ways that she could use this. For the most part, she taught Minoru how to use the most dangerous kinds of attacks with his power. As while Cross was definitely the strongest, the most destructive out of all their powers, it definitely went to Crisp. Especially when one of her powers involved deep frying her enemy. Yeah, not exactly a good way, not exactly a pleasant way to go, but it works. But because of the fact that he was surrounded by so many women, and most of them terrified the heck out of him, he eventually learned how to respect women and not be a pervert. He actually started becoming a pervert at a very young age, and the other Gladiator Masters did not stand for that and told him that if he kept being a pervert and kept doing that kind of stuff, he would end up losing his powers. And it had already happened to another one of the Gladiator Masters in the past. One who knows what happened to her now. She's probably dead by now. But she got her powers taken away from her because of the fact that she abused the power given to her and used it to make herself popular and used it to put herself above others, which resulted in her losing her powers after getting a swift and heavy beating from Speed Fury. More time passed, and eventually the time for the hero exam came up. And Izuku and Katsumi were somewhat nervous. Mina could have been more well trained, as she wasn't very good with her grades at all. She knew how to fight, but was still terrible at actually paying attention in class. But as they went to the exam, they started after they finished the written exam, which Mina actually did better at than she did in continuity. I don't know how she did in the actual continuity, but in this one she did really well. That's when the exam started, and they were told about the different point levels of robots. And unlike in the original one, Ida does not interrupt present Mike, and I'll tell you why later. But as they get to their different city sites, Izuku and Mina are in the same site. Katsumi is not with Izuku because different sites, different schools. And they both actually run into Ida there. And right off the bat, they can tell Ida is an omniforce user. And he's probably one of the ones that they didn't get the chance to introduce themselves to. I'd show you a picture, but I don't actually have the picture drawn yet. And I'll just explain what he looks like. It was obvious that he was an omniforce user by the fact that he had a tail coming out of his tailbone. He had, where his heels should be, there were two wheels in place of it. He had exhaust pipes coming out of his calves, but that looked more like it had to do with his quirk. But then on a closer inspection, the exhaust pipes were kind of bigger than they should be. And he also had exhaust pipes coming out of his elbows, and two coming out of his head, like horns. He also had two more coming out of his back. And after some inner thoughts, they eventually went to talk to him, and he introduced himself as Tenya Ida, and that he had been chosen by the Gladiator Masters to be given his own Omniforce abilities, and that he had been infused with a Turbo Dragon, which is why he had wheels on his heels. I did not mean to make that rhyme. He told them that if it wasn't for the Gladiator Masters, he'd be a bit more stiff and uptight and would struggle with making friends more than he does now. And that he's hoping to become a great hero from their teachings. Izuku and Mina both said that they were also Omniforce users, and that Izuku was actually the leader of the newest team. Ida realizing this, then said, "That means that I fall under your orders when in the field of battle." And before they could continue talking anymore, that's when the test started. All three of them, Ida, Izuku, and Mina, rushed out there, along with a few others who also seemed to have Omniforce powers. Omniforce power. When people are trained by the Gladiator Masters, they seem to be more alert and ready to do what needs to be done. Mina recognized one of them as Kirishima, which is probably why they hadn't seen each other in a while. His hair was now red, but it wasn't dyed. That was just his new hair color, thanks to his transformation. His skin was now a brownish color, or like a brownish tan, and he also seemed to have rock manipulation because several pieces of stone were floating around him as he was getting ready to attack the robots. There was also another student who had earphone jacks for earlobes on her earlobes. She had more of a hold on. I actually have the picture. 1 second. There it is. She had more greenish skin, and the jacks on the ends of the cords of her jacks were every now and then transforming into different weapons. Her trying to figure out what weapon would work best with what she's up against. She also had what looked like bat ears on her head instead of having horns, but she was still clearly a dragon. Maybe it was a kind of dragon that they hadn't seen before. Maybe a bat dragon? Yes, that's actually what it's called. I didn't really have anything else to call it. But as they kept going, it was very obvious that they were kind of like owning the entire area. They weren't really slowing down, and for the most part, the other students were kind of getting a little bit irritated that they were doing so much better. They actually saw Mineta a little bit later, but they weren't actually able to pick him out because he was actually still shorter than everybody else there. Well, all the other Gladiator Masters, at least. For all the other students, he was around the same size as them. As they kept working together, that's when the Zero Pointer showed up. And Izuku saw Uraraka, who was trying to hold it back with her space powers. She was using her meteor fists to punch it to keep it from going any farther, so that no more students got hurt. Izuku and Mina immediately rushed forward to help out as well, them helping Uraraka keep the machine back. Izuku then shouted for Kirishima to smash the head with a few rocks, which he does. While Ida tries to get all the other students that couldn't get out of the way in time out of there as fast as possible. Ida is basically the speedster of their team. When all is said and done, they all scored pretty high. Izuku was the highest scorer on the entrance exam total, with Katsumi coming in second, but of course nobody really saw what Katsumi was doing because everybody else was like all teamed up in their area. Katsumi did meet a few of the Omniforce wielders in her area. The only two that they didn't actually see that they already met were Todoroki and actually no, it would have just been Todoroki because they hadn't met Momo yet, and Momo is going to be an Omniforce user in this one. But as a few more days continue, they're kind of like getting antsy, wondering when their tests results are going to come. And it's taking a while, but every now and then they'll all meet up at the beach and just kind of hang out. One day they actually invite the other glider masters to show up, and it was taking everything for for Rainbow to try to get Speed Fury to take off his shirt. Speed Fury always wore a swimming shirt with his swimming shorts because he knew how Rainbow Shock was. And no matter how many times she would try, he would not take off the shirt, and he would even resort to running if he had to. And they all pretty much just had a good time. They would always like have the food themed Gladiator Masters over there to like make snacks and stuff and have like a barbecue. Eventually, their entrance exam letters arrived, and they all met up back at the beach to look at the see if they got accepted. They also invited all their mentors over. And once they opened it, a hologram appeared with a very familiar face. Booyah! I am here as a projection. It was All Might, and he was here to gladly tell them they all had passed and had also earned rescue points. And now I'm not going to go into how many points they all earned because like they're let's just say that they earned like a lot more than they did in the original. Let's see. And upon hearing that they all had passed, all of Izuku's mentors, Telekinetic included, picked him up and basically just dunked him in the water in a celebratory fashion. Meanwhile, the Minoru's mentors all piled a bunch of food on top of him, basically their version of a dog pile. While Katsumi's mentors gave her a simple slug in the arm, as you know. That's how it is between all the rage boosted users. Eventually, the day came where they had to go to UA, and as they got there, they actually met up with several more Omniforce wielders. One of these Omniforce wielders happened to be another recommended student. This recommended student being Momo Yaoyorozu. So this is going to be her hero costume. I changed it to be less revealing. I didn't like her costume before because there was like no armor on it. I also made the boots larger, and these little brown parts are armored as well. She's also an Inferno Demon, which I thought was actually a pretty good idea. And unlike the other members of their team, she wasn't actually trained by the Gladiator Masters. The Gladiator Masters had her be trained by the Inferno Demons, because she had a power that only one of the other Inferno Demons wielded, and she also wanted to learn how to actually fight, because her quirk's not going to be the only thing to help her out. And as for what her quirk is, she can copy the powers or the attacks of any person, but while she can only copy one power at a time, she can copy the attacks and they'll stay permanently, but they'll only be half as strong as the original one. Anyway, they also noticed two male students that they hadn't seen before. These male students were a boy that seemingly had metallic-looking skin. I'm sorry, I didn't draw his face in there. He had metallic-looking skin, and he seemed to have a weird snake-like creature following him around. He also seemed to have what looked like tape dispensers on his wrists and on his back. As for the other one, he seemed to have multiple limbs, and from his appearance, it looked to be that he was, well, maybe part of those alien species that Izuku met before, and he seemed to be a water elemental. His hands could also change into different weapons, and different body parts too, but he mostly stuck with weapons. He was both a recon expert and a close range fighter. Basically, 2-for-1 deal, if you know what I mean. Anyway, they all began talking for a while, until they heard a tired voice from behind them. Well, two tired voices. Well, one was tired, the other one was more like kind of bored. The first voice simply said, "If you're here to make friends, then you can just leave now." They all turned around to see what looked like a hobo in a rather weird-looking scarf. The other person next to him seemed to be more laid back, but also seemed to be bored for just being here. The man had black skin, feathered wings, a curved horn poking out of his forehead, and what looked to be a horse's tail. And right off the bat, several people knew that he was an omniforce wielder. The man then smiled at Izuku knowingly and said, "You didn't think you'd be getting rid of us that easily, did you?" The teacher that looked like a hobo spoke first. "My name is Shota Aizawa, and I'll be your homeroom teacher." Then the other one spoke. "My name's Onyx, and I'll be the one teaching those of you who have Omniforce abilities. We also have another teacher in Class 1B, because they also have a few Omniforce wielders. Other than that, we're going to be doing what was it? I forgot what they called it. Quirk assessment test, I believe is what it was." And Aizawa said, "And if any of you hold back or don't give it your all, I'm expelling anyone who doesn't." Onyx gave him a side look, showing that he didn't really agree with what Aizawa was doing, knowing that Aizawa would definitely expel somebody if they were quirkless, and knowing that and they didn't have any power, but luckily nobody here was. Well, not anymore, at least. As they walked out, they began getting ready to start the tests, and Aizawa called up two people: Izuku for the Omniforce wielders, and for the people that had regular quirks, he called up Sato, because Sato was the strongest one there that only had a quirk. First off, they had Izuku show what he could do, and he basically just threw the ball almost into the stratosphere. Didn't go as far as he was hoping, but it still went pretty far. Sato didn't get as far as Izuku, at all, but he still did pretty good, considering that, what his quirk was. And basically, in this one, everyone does their best. Nobody gets expelled. Everything's all good. And they get ready to leave, only this time with the 3 new students they had met following close behind them. They all decided to head back to the Gladiator base to get to know one another better, so they could actually, train more. And, actually get used to working as a team. They were finally, Izuku and Nakatsumi's dream had come true. They had made it into UA, but even though they didn't really need to anymore. And they were excited for what the next day held for them, hoping that they would get to see more pro heroes and even more action in the future. Little did they know that there was somebody hiding in the shadows who was ready to enact their plans. Part 3 will be soon.